Zach, we are back and we are talking dynasty moves to make or not. We are kind of blending the two concepts together, moves to make or moves to not make together. But it was a crazy week one. Before we get into them, the first move to make, like the video, comment down below what moves you're looking to make this week. How did you do in week one? What surprised you the most? We want to hear all about it, and we want to hear from you over on our Discord. It was crazy how the Discord was going off throughout the entirety of week one, Thursday, Friday, college games on Saturday talking about, and Sunday eventually as well. So we want to hear from you over there. Get over there for a free week trial, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. You can find that link in the YouTube description box below or the pinned comment. But with all that said, Zach, let's get to the content that people came for. Your first move to make or not. What do you got kicking it off here?
Yeah, Bob, it was a wet and wild week one. Not really wet, but it was wild week one. A lot of offenses struggled. And so one thing that I'm really trying to do is just practice some patience and don't panic on the rookie quarterbacks here. Combined, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, 3 of the first-round starting quarterbacks. The other 3 did not play. They were a combined 4 of 22, which is 18%. For 68 yards and 2 interceptions on throws, Bob, 10 or more yards downfield. 3 quarterbacks completed 4 passes beyond 10 yards yesterday. The rest of the league completed more than 47% of their throws and averaged 11.3 yards per attempt in week one. So very clearly, rookie quarterbacks struggled yesterday. Again, these are quarterbacks that are typically going on to pretty bad teams as well. And it's going to signal some panic in a lot of people. And I'm here to caution you to just chill out. All right. I went back and looked at some other quarterbacks and their rookie debuts. John Elway, 1 of 8 for 14 yards and an interception. Peyton Manning, 3 picks on 37 pass attempts. Troy Aikman, 17 for 35, 180 yards and a shutout loss. Joe Montana, 5 of 12 for 36 yards in his first start before getting pulled for Steve DeBerg. Ben Roethlisberger, 12 of 20 with 2 picks and a loss to the Ravens. Then after that, proceeded to win his next 15 games that season. This time a year ago, Bob, nobody was proclaiming C.J. Stroud to be the king of the rookie quarterbacks after throwing for 242 yards and 5 sacks in a blowout loss to the Ravens. If you remember the game script there, they were trailing big in the second half, so they started chucking the ball. That's why he had 242 yards. 3 weeks later, he torched the Steelers for 306 yards and 2 touchdowns and pretty much never looked back. This is just an exercise in patience. Let's check in on these 3 quarterbacks in the next few weeks. I have no idea how that's going to go. I have a different feeling about them all. I don't necessarily look at any of them as like a bust or anything like that. It's just, whoever you have of those quarterbacks, just be patient. Don't panic. Typically, I don't like to have a rookie quarterback in my starting lineup, especially week one. You just never really get the results that you're expecting at that point. And so, if you have 2 other veteran quarterbacks, I'd be starting those guys. Or I'd be trying to go out there and get those guys. Can I get a Sam Darnold? Can I go get a Derek Carr, who was phenomenal yesterday? And look, it was probably against a very putrid defense. We'll learn more about that down the line. But Derek Carr's a reliable quarterback, and he's in place for the next 2 years. So this is a bit of caution. Don't panic on the rookie quarterbacks. And also don't rely on them. Just make sure you have another plan in place. I really want to make that my point. But really, it's just don't panic. It's don't panic on these quarterbacks. It was a terrible week one all around the league. I think we were discussing before the show. More than half the league threw for 175 yards or less, including all 3 of these teams. So just relax. Hopefully you have a plan in place where you do not have to rely on these starting quarterbacks for the first month of the season. And let's see how things go down the line with all 3 of these rookie quarterbacks, Bob.
So much of the start of the season is just kind of weathering the storm. And so many offenses, especially we were talking about a pre-show, with the change teams have made, with the change the NFL has made preseason and how teams approach preseason and playing their players in the preseason process. Offenses are more out of sync and ungelled than they've ever been to start the year. The first 4 weeks or so of the season, kind of a bunch of learning curves going on, a lot of getting continuity with your teammates, getting everything in rhythm and sync. So don't take anything with much more than a grain of salt early on in the year, because everything's still kind of getting fleshed out and worked out. And that goes double here for rookies. And I know I hear the comment section already. You brought up a bunch of Hall of Fame quarterbacks here. Easy to kind of go over with hindsight, but that's just a prime example of like, hey, these guys went on to have great careers too. These quarterbacks can do the same. We like all of these guys for the most part for a good bit. So yeah, and that goes not even just rookie quarterbacks, but rookies in general. Offenses across the league were down. There weren't a lot of great rookie performances across the board. There weren't a lot of great performances across the board in the NFL. It was certainly a down week. So definitely with any rookie who is still playing, still out there starting games, that's a win for you for this week. And like you said, we've been hammering that all off season too, is to not have to rely on rookies in your starting roster because it's a slow start. You should expect slow start from offenses. That goes double for rookies in offense as well, getting acclimated to the regular season. Great point, Zach. I'm going to move on to another move to not make. And this spawned from a Discord discussion. This is not to like poo-poo on anything. You know, we talked this out, and that's why we have the Discord. We discuss kind of what we're thinking. Questions get brought to us, whatever the case is. And this spawned because of the Jordan Love injury and how to make good on that. Before we knew anything about what the extent of the injury was, when it was kind of fearing the worst, we were worried it was going to be an ACL injury. This was like Friday morning, I believe Saturday morning, this discussion was going on. It was, how do I fix my quarterback situation for the rest of the season? Because Love's done or whatever the case is. But the move to not make here is making premature moves without knowing as much of the story as we can get access to. Obviously, we can't get 100% of it, but let's wait till we get all the news before we really make a strong decision here. This is particularly when it comes to selling or buying to fill injury gaps. Whether maybe you're selling Jordan Love. In this case, we were buying another quarterback to make up for possibly losing Jordan Love for an extended period. But either way, that's kind of where this is going. So why not to make this move? You don't know the extent of the injury. As we've seen grotesque injuries that look horrible, like the player's done for their career and they're back next week. We've seen it happen. And we've seen players who, oh man, that didn't look too bad. And I don't know if we've seen season enders out of that, but we've seen players miss much more time than we expect from injuries. So you can only do so much. And all of the Twitter docs out there do a great job. I'm not here to poo-poo on that, but they're not 100% perfect when they are just looking at film, trying to speculate. So just take a breath. Let the news roll out. You have a week before you have to make another lineup decision. You don't have to fill that gap. And it's probably going to be harder to fill that gap because whoever is possibly selling you that piece wants to start that player this week or might be forced to start that player this week, whatever the case is. So just don't panic. It's easy enough to just wait it out. It's usually a day max until they release the extent of the injuries. We have several injuries that popped up on Sunday that we had come into us by the time we were recording this video today. It's not like you're waiting 4 days to get a response or figure out what's going on. So just take a breath. It's easy enough to sit back, maybe kind of take the time to look out, think of what the potential outcomes could be. Could be season, could be a few weeks, could be an IR stint. Could be no time at all, and you don't even really need to make a move. Feel out, look around the league. What are my options? What are the possible avenues I have? Who's rebuilding? Who's not? Who can I kind of maybe knock on the doors of and go from there? And also, if you're making a move before the rest of the week's games close out, it's not like you can chuck that player in your lineup right away anyway. And especially in this league, it was a one quarterback league. So I'm just not dying that much at the quarterback position. He had Kirk Cousins as well. The deal came up. It was for Kyler Murray, which I like the quarterback, but I don't feel the need in a one quarterback to make that jump necessarily. And I didn't like the values that were being tossed out either, but that's another discussion for another day. Bonus points you get in the Discord, but either way. So you could be spending these assets who could be needed for your lineup as a whole. These could be starters for you that you're moving to get your fix, whatever the injury is, not necessarily this Jordan Love issue, but that's just kind of what sparked this idea, this conversation for a player who may not be able to play for you this week and opening yourself up to injury risk with that player while you don't know the full extent of the injury of the original player that you're trying to fill the gap for. I get, we preach activity. I get not wanting to be idle and wanting to get the solution taken care of. But just take a breath, let the news come out, and make a more informed decision later. Plus, the level of injury very likely will determine the type of move to make. You might just need a Band-Aid. You might need somebody who is your, new season-long starter, or you might need to make a really big move. If you're losing for an example, if you're losing like a Josh Allen, somebody who is a top-tier quarterback, don't want to speak that into existence too much, but if you're losing a top-tier quarterback, you need to find a way to replace points. If you can, that's your possible big move that you'd have to make. But you might not have to make that big of a move if you're not losing that player for that long. All in all, you might save yourself from having to make the move that drains you of the depth that Zack talks so frequently about, that we try to talk about in the offseason building up. You want to keep that for the long haul. You don't want to spend it all right away. Zack, you kind of had the topic or the talking point of not panicking with your point too, and that's just kind of a great running trend. Like, hey, it's 1 week. 1 week does not a season make. So keep that in mind. Zack, feel free to touch on this before you get into your next one.
Very well put, Shakespeare. This is a great point. And hopefully, look, this is not like a we told you so kind of thing, but hopefully you were prepared for this, because good Lord, have we done so many videos, Bob, where it's literally, I said, don't wait for an injury to make a move. Have options available in case of an injury. I have in my home league, I have David Njoku, who is my fill-in for TJ Hawkinson. And right before the season, I know we talked about this, I acquired Taysom Hill. It's not like I feel great about starting Taysom Hill, but do you feel great about any tight end right now? Like
Nope.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go out and buy a Sam Laporta to fill in for 2 weeks for the player who's supposed to fill in for 6 weeks. Hopefully you had these things already settled, so where you don't have to make a panic decision. But even if you do, let the week play out. Go to waivers, see who's available. You're just, for the most part, I don't think we have any like super devastating injuries at this point. I know Puka Nacua, but that's even 4 weeks. At this point, you're looking for Band-Aids right now. So don't make any kind of panic decisions. And like I said in my first point, and you said in your second, just chill out. Just calm down. It's not time to panic. It's time to let everything settle and then see where you stand Friday, Saturday. What decisions do you need to make then? But hopefully you're not in a situation where you have to do something because you listened to our advice in July and in August when we said have players ready to go on your bench that you feel comfortable filling in for an injury.
Zack, get into your next point here. Another good one. Always good to check in on those league mates and see how they're feeling after week one. Because I know, again, just to chime in on the Discord, I know there's some guys out there that were hyped coming into the season. They felt like they had this juggernaut. And if there's anything that fantasy football is very good at, it's humbling the heck out of you. And again, if you want to join that Discord, we're going to talk about it a little bit more. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. A link is in the description, as well as the pinned comment on YouTube. So check that out. Free week trial. So get on over there. But Zack, get in your next point here.
Yeah, Bob, you kind of briefly touched on this in a passing comment in your point just there. But I'm really, if I'm in a competing situation, I'm checking in with the big losers in my league in week one. I don't mean losers like you're a loser, but I mean the teams that lost. And you know who those teams are. You know when there's a disappointing loss. And as a matter of fact, in one or two of my leagues, Bob, I have teams that vastly underperformed, and I'm shocked. And after 1 or 2 weeks, it's like, okay, what do I do here? Do I wait this out, or is it time to sell one or two of these players that is a little bit older, like a Jacoby Myers, et cetera, et cetera? So in my competitive leagues, Bob, I'm really just looking for these teams that had a very disappointing week one or have kind of, waved the white flag already and seeing if they're panic selling. Are there any teams selling their injured players? Jordan Love, Puka Nacua, a couple more. There's a couple more examples of players like Roma Dunze. The last we've heard is he's getting an MRI. Is anybody panic selling? Or is anybody selling players that they thought they were going to be competitive and they're not, like they're just not believing in that situation after 1 week? We're practicing patience here. Other people in your leagues are not. And as one of my previous points says, if you're not first, you're last. And you got to be first to this. If you're in a competitive situation and you need that extra piece, check on some of these teams that scored 80 points this week or scored 70. It depends on your league scoring, right? Had a disappointing performance week for their fantasy team. Not necessarily a loss, but a disappointing week. And you should have a pulse of your league. This is where being active in your league and in the league chat will have like who's going for it, who's not, who's rebuilding, who's competing, and checking on those teams that had a bust for week one and see if there's a move for you to make here to make yourself better. For me, looking at injured players is probably going to be a topic we talk about moves to make for the next 14 weeks because that's just my MO, right? Is somebody trying to move Jordan Love? Like I had a offer this is just spitballing here. Nothing's happened with this, but somebody offered me their Jordan Love for my Caleb Williams. And I'm like, ooh, interesting.
Ooh.
I don't know what to do there. But that's what I'm talking about here. This situation exists. Somebody has Jordan Love and does not want to wait for that injury to settle itself out. So make those phone calls or send those texts or DMs in your league and see what's happening with the teams that vastly underperformed and see if you can benefit from it. And look, you don't have to be in a competitive situation for this, Bob. You could be in a rebuilding situation and still buy Jordan Love. That's not going to stop your rebuild. If anything, it's going to accelerate it. So this is something that we're practicing. Be calm, relax, patience, but see if there are other people who are not following this advice and see if you can take advantage of it, Bob.
Yeah, 100%. And I promise there are people in your leagues, look at the league chat from the week, see if anybody was posting the do something gifs of, the guy poking the thing in the whatever gif. You know what I'm talking about, the do something gifts. But either way, moving on to things, see what your league mates are thinking. It costs nothing to do, takes a little bit of time. And it's one of those things where you can get the pulse on, and another player that, we were talking about in the Discord as well, T. Higgins is somebody who I am certainly sick of. I just got my first share of T. Higgins in a long time in our Going for Gold Dynasty Rewind League. And just with the, injuries and stuff, I'm over it, man. I put him on the block the second he was ruled out. And I know I'm not alone on that. And if you are a T. Higgins believer, now is a great time to go buy low, because I tell you what, I'm there, man. I'm not going to sell him super low. I'm going to get something done right. I'm probably going to use him to tier up. But either way, that's a thought process. Like you said, you can target this method with any build. Another position in general I'm going after, if I don't have an elite tight end already or a top 5-6 tight end already, now is a great time to go knock on some tight end doors, because tight ends sucked this week. And not even like just not good, but like sucked this week. Like there were not a lot of good tight end performances. Foster Moreau had a good week. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But, if it wasn't Isaiah Likely or Foster Moreau, your tight end did not do well this week. And, as much as he's a rookie tight end, Brock Bowers overperformed, still didn't do a ton, had a bunch of targets and stuff. But tight ends, man, go knock on those doors, because I promise the tight ends have not been the princes that were promised this season. So those are guys, Chris Olave, Drake London, all guys still in prime positions to do a lot of good things this year, but just not this week. So keep those in mind. Knock on some doors. Anybody that underperformed, the doors are wide open. So go on and walk through them. But let's talk about this next move to make. And I was asked in our Discord, and I love this question, so shout out Blake. I was asked in the Discord about who are some players I'm sending out seconds for after week one. And with this, just because of the value of players, I can't say there's a lot of, and what I think I'm going to do with these second round picks, the players I'm getting, there's not a lot of younger assets on this. So this is very much so at this point for competitive teams. Not a lot of rebuilding teams are going to get a ton out of this. But hey, things to think about when you are turning the corner, the type of players you are looking for, players that you might be able to send a second round pick for to get a conversation started, if not a done deal. So a lot of running backs I still think are pretty lowly valued, even though we had a lot of pop-off weeks. I don't think a second gets it done for all of them, especially depending on the team that they're on. But Joe Mixon, somebody I'm very heavy on. Alvin Kamara, Ramondre Stevenson having a great week, still pretty lowly valued. He's somebody that after people see the stat lines are probably going to be a little bit more in on. And again, second conversation starter, if they're a competitive team, you're going to need to send more. You're going to need to send another worthwhile asset along with it to probably get that deal done. James Conner is somebody who I still think people are just, I was in Sleeper dropped their newest addition to their app, which I love, by the way, the Sleeper Zone, big fan. And everybody, anytime James Conner was going to get carry, where's Trey Benson? Where's Trey Benson? Where's Trey Benson? And I'm just like, sorry. James Conner's there until he's not. Jerome Ford, another guy I'm big in on. I think he is going to get a big chunk of the work this year, even after Nick Chubb comes back, because I find it hard to believe that Nick Chubb's going to be much of his old self. Brandon Cooks had a great game. I think you may be able to send a second for Brandon Cooks and a third, depending on the team you're talking to. Mike Evans, somebody always criminally undervalued, probably need more than a second. Chris Godwin, somebody who had a really good game. Baker Mayfield was another good, valuable quarterback if you either need a fill-in for Jordan Love or, you were talking about needing quarterback help. Also another quarterback who had a really good week. And a big question with us over the offseason was, can he still be good? Granted, I think Washington is going to be one of the worst defenses we see this year, but I could be wrong there. I don't think I am. Cooper Kupp back from the dead, especially with Puka Nacua missing time, going on IR. Cooper Kupp is going to be a target monster. I don't care what you want to tell me about Tyler Johnson, anybody else on that offense. It's the Cooper Kupp show again. He's back, and I'm not going to sit here and act like he's going to play the whole season because I'm sure he'll miss time too. Maybe by the time Puka Nacua is back, we see Cooper Kupp dip. I don't know. But either way, it's going to be a fun ride until it's not. So Cooper Kupp, and buy low on some of these tight ends with injuries. David Njoku, Jake Ferguson. If you're in a non-tight end premium, two guys that you can definitely look to target. I'd probably prefer to go after Jake Ferguson just because of Deshaun Watson just not looking good at football. I mean, just not great. There's a lot of rust to shake off there at the end of the day. So early on in the season, I don't want to make big sweeping moves if I don't have to, unless they're somewhat at a value, they come to me. I don't want to go seeking these big deals because at the end of the day, the season is a marathon, not a sprint. I need assets to cover my butt over the course of the season to make up for injuries, help me in bye week situations, whatever the case is, when players underperform, because they will. And when matchups are tougher and I don't want to play certain players, whatever the case is, you get it. Instead of overspending early, spending up big to go get these expensive assets, chuck a second out for some of these guys. And again, Zach, I actually wanted to get your thought on this before I kick to the next point here, or about this player specifically. But these are players that are going to be on my radar the entire season, and not just now, because they could be on teams where the managers who have them fall out of contention and start looking at next year. And these are not next year assets. These are this year assets. Outside of Ramondre Stevenson, probably going to get you some long-ish term value. You probably get a couple of seasons out of him yet. But Zach, J.K. Dobbins was a specific question in the Discord. Are we at the point after that massive game? Are we at the point of sending a second round pick for J.K. Dobbins yet? I know you're a big J.K. guy, but are you less?
I am, but it's just tough, man, because as a J.K. guy, I've been burned for 2-3 years now with the injuries. And they're very severe injuries that compromise your ability to do your job as is. I think the version of the Chargers offense is exactly what it's going to be. I think J.K. Dobbins will get 10 to 15 touches a game. For me, I'm just, because I've been burned for so many years by J.K. Dobbins, I'm done. But I wouldn't blame you if you wanted in on that.
And then in general, any of these other players you like, dislike, any other players you want to add too? Are there any other players that stick out in your mind that you toss a second round pick for?
No, you got a lot of the good ones. I mean, obviously Mike Evans, big. I'm a big Mike Evans guy. I think you touched on a lot of the older players that are still producing. Cooper Kupp, man, that's you can get Cooper Kupp for a second. Wow.
I have to admit, there's no way somebody could look me in the face and ask a first round pick for Cooper Kupp,
right,
and ask me to respond seriously, because yes, he's going to get a lot of targets in the meantime, but last 2 years we've seen issues. I want the guy. I'm willing to go like upwards of like, if I'm expecting my second to be later, a second and a third is probably what I'd be willing to do. But other than that, man, maybe I throw you one of these, I don't know, garbage waiver wire wide receivers. Who knows? Yeah, I get it. Cooper Kupp is certainly going to be a hot commodity going forward because he is Matthew Stafford's best friend. Going on with this point, we've been trying to hammer a lot of these guys over the course of the offseason. Again, trying to get these guys on your rosters before this hype kicks in. We knew once these guys started scoring points again, their values would go up. So second is a good starting point again. I think you're going to need a little bit more. But Zach, talking about something we need a little bit more from these tough players that you're going to talk about here with your next point, your next move to make. What do you got?
Yeah, Bob, I'm going to go ahead and move off some of these second-year quarterbacks. It took me 1 week, right? I'm obviously C.J. Stroud is not on this list, but it's been 1 week, and I didn't see anything that makes me want to keep either Bryce Young or Will Levis. For Bryce Young, Bob, if you didn't see the game yesterday, you may assume that Bryce Young was bad. But in reality, he was terrible. It was all I needed to see, Bob. I'm okay with being wrong at this juncture with Bryce Young. We'll get to Will Levis in a second. If he turns into anything productive, I'm okay just not hanging on anymore. Is it too late to sell? Probably. But maybe you wait for a respectable game and try to flip. I don't know, Bob. I know I'm preaching like don't panic, doing this, doing that. But at the same time, that was bad yesterday. And I do think the Saints defense is a little bit more on the upper top 10 defense that is going to be in the NFL this year. But I just seen enough, but first pass of the game, interception, second pass of the second half, interception. I can't do this anymore. According to Fantasy Points data, shout out to those guys. They do a lot of really good analytical work. Bryce Young's catchable throw rate in week 1 was 53%. Worst among 30 quarterbacks pending Monday Night Football. That's where your other two are. And this is after no quarterback had a lower catchable throw rate than Bryce Young at 69.7% last season. So, yeah, I think I've seen enough. I mean, it was so bad. It was so bad that I cannot continue to preach patience in that situation. Will Levis, I was already kind of out on Will Levis in the offseason, but I'm out for good at this point. His team lost, Bob, after their defense gave up 0 touchdowns and less than 150 yards of offense. Outside of his first game where he went just absolutely nuclear, what else is there to say that Will Levis is going to be a good starting quarterback beyond this season, or even just be a starting quarterback beyond this season? There is no real investment in Will Levis. It's a 4-year rookie contract. Teams eat those contracts all the time if they have to. It's not first-round numbers. It's the 33rd overall pick or whatever it was. It's not a first-round pick. There's no heavy investment in Will Levis, and the team will move on after the season if they don't see some kind of growth. And at the same time, like that's a little bit of an older team too. You think about the skill position players: DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. Mm-hmm. A lot of the guys they brought in free agency and trades are older players, so there's nothing stopping them from turning a new leaf if they wanted to next year, whether that be in free agency or trade for a quarterback or draft another one. So I saw what I needed to see from those two yesterday. If it was anything short of a terrible game, maybe I'd be interested in giving it another opportunity. The only thing I could say for Bryce Young is that he's got Dave Canales, but at the end of the day, Dave Canales, he can't turn a bad player into a good one. I think he has turned good players into respectable players. I mean, Baker Mayfield had 4 touchdowns yesterday. It was the number 1 overall pick. It was a Heisman Trophy winner. Russell Wilson was an MVP candidate before Dave Canales got there. Geno Smith was highly touted coming out of college. So, listen, we might have to just admit that the NFL missed on Bryce Young, missed pretty badly. And I'm at the point where I'm cool. Like if I can turn those guys into anything at this point, I might take advantage of that. If it's something respectable, I'm not moving anybody for a 3rd round pick or anything like that. If I can get a 2nd and a 3rd, I might consider some of those deals. I think I've seen all I need to see out of those two. I'm not saying to panic sell. I'm just saying I'm okay with being wrong if they turn out to be anything productive, Bob.
Do you think you could move either of those guys for a Baker Mayfield?
No
Straight
way.
up?
No shot.
No.
Nope.
No. Okay.
Dude just signed a $100 million contract and just threw for 4 touchdowns. Nope.
Yeah, fair enough. Probably have to add something to it. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through trades right now. He's moving. Both these guys are moving. I mean, so there's still interest from some sides out there. Looking up trades on Dynasty trade database, plenty of trades just today. So there's still interest from some people, and they're not bad trades. I mean, a 27 first-round pick is probably not what you want out of Bryce Young unless you're just looking to re-roll quarterback anyway. But even that's a little bit far out for a quarterback first-round pick for me. But yeah, something to think about. One I saw for Will Levis was using Bucky Irving to get up to J.J. McCarthy, which I think is iffy depending on what you want to do, I guess. Yeah, man, I don't disagree. I think another access route for you to get rid of these guys, dumping these guys off on the Jordan Love manager, they might be that little bit desperate to take a little bit of a shot on these guys, just get another quarterback on their roster. to help out in the interim. Zach, real quick before we get out of here, we are going to be talking about some waiver wire moves to make or not. Lightning round, buy or sell. Some of these guys may be kicking around out on your waiver wires. Let's talk about it. Foster Moreau, Zach, buy or sell?
Sell. Not interested.
No, fair enough.
Not interested.
I can't say I am either at this point, but with how Titans performed, if you're that desperate, I couldn't blame you for taking a shot. Moving on to the next one here. Buy or sell? Tyler Johnson of the Los Angeles Rams, longtime Tampa Bay Buccaneer, never caught traction. But he caught traction in yesterday's game. What do you think about Tyler Johnson, Zach?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I was a little bit shocked to see him over a guy like Jordan Whittington. But, it was a situation where Puka Nacua was ruled out. And then for some reason, the Rams, I don't know what it is about some of these game plans week one, but Matthew Stafford dropped back 50 times yesterday. Kyron Williams only had 18 carries. I think as a team, they only had 22 or 23 rush attempts to 50 dropbacks in a game that was, for all intents and purposes, close the entire time. It went to overtime, as a matter of fact. So, yeah, Tyler Johnson, 5 for 76. He had 7 targets. I don't see why that's not at least in line moving forward. But I can't sit here and say confidently that he's the piece that steps in for Puka Nacua. So buy at your own risk there.
I think it's probably a sell for me unless I'm super desperate, and this has to be in like a start 11 type league. But I figure at this point I'm not at bye weeks yet. I'm not a guy I'm super sweating adding. And I think with Jordan Whittington, I feel like he's kind of being coddled to be the eventual Cooper Kupp replacement. I think he's Cooper Kupp's kind of like understudy, if you want to call it that. So that might be why he's not getting more reps, whereas Tyler Johnson's getting thrown in the mix, but who knows? Either way, moving on to this one, Zach, somebody who netted a bunch of targets for the Denver Broncos, Devon Vele, buy or sell out of nowhere. Are you interested or not? We're going to be talking about his teammate as well, Josh Reynolds, but that's in a couple. But Devon Vele, are you interested, Zach?
I am interested in Devon Vele. I have a few shares already as it is of just having him on the taxi squad in quite a few leagues because once the Broncos let go of Tim Patrick, that wide receiver room was wide open. As a matter of fact, through yesterday or through Sunday, Devon Vele, amongst all wide receivers in week one with a minimum of 3 targets, had the 4th most yards of separation on his targets at 4.4, right behind Jaden Reed, Jamar Chase, and Devontae Adams. And he caught all 8 of his targets in week one. Yeah, I'm going to buy Devon Vele in this situation, Bob.
All right, fair enough. I am fine. I guess if I have room to spare on my bench, but I'm probably not looking to make room for him, depending on what I have going on. But moving on to the next one, buy or sell Ray McLeod. Are you interested on getting into this offense, Zach, after a lackluster showing we saw this week? What do you think?
Nah, I'm not too interested in the Falcons wide receiver 3. That's going to be one week where it's Darnell Mooney, one week where it's Ray McLeod. There's no comfort and security in Ray McLeod, unless that team suffered 2 or 3 injuries at the skill position players. And even then I'd be like, I don't know. Anybody could fill in it, on this roster. So not buying, selling, not really interested in rostering him.
Sell for me as well. Mid stays mid. But the last one here, buy or sell Josh Reynolds, reliable on the Broncos as well. Zach, are you interested in Josh Reynolds here?
I am interested in Josh Reynolds. I do have a couple shares. Again, same thing after the Broncos released Tim Patrick. Somebody had to take a stranglehold of that wide receiver room, and I don't think that that's him. But Bo Nix has got to throw to somebody, and it's very clearly not Marvin Mims. It was a little bit of Cortland Sutton, and then a little bit of Devon Vele, and then a little bit of Josh Reynolds. So I'd buy if I had the roster spot. I'm not super gung-ho about this, but for me, this is more of a buy than a sell over anything.
I'm with you on this one. I think I prefer Josh Reynolds just because I know he's been able to get involved and stick around. He's one of those players that's just a cockroach, won't go away, will continue to stay involved. So I'm interested in him probably the most out of this bunch. And that's not saying I love Josh Reynolds. That's just saying I don't really care for a lot of these players. But that doesn't mean you don't have to care for a lot of these players. Let us know in the comments. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. And let us know what moves you're trying to make this week. What surprised you the most in week one? Did you win your first matchup or did you suffer a heartbreaking loss? Either way, we want to hear about it. We want to hear from you over in the Discord as well, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. That link is in the YouTube description as well as in the pinned comment below. Check us out for a free week trial. Come hang out with us on game day and see all of the goodies we have to offer over there. But with all that said, all the promo in the book, Zach and I are going to get the heck on out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.